Hi everyone. Today we are going to study the things or devices in IoT. So basically, as we all know that an IoT is an ecosystem which consists of various devices, and as I already explained you that an ecosystem is a system which consists of components which are interdependent upon each other. So there are so many systems, for example, if I take the example of a sensor, a device, actuators, these are all systems or these are all components of an IoT. So all of them are equally important. All of them play an equal role in forming IoT. Without sensors, you take out sensors from actuators and the physical devices, IoT will not be there. You take you take out actuators and just leave sensors and physical devices, IoT will not work. So basically it is an ecosystem. That means it consists of various components which are interdependent upon each other, and without the existence of even a single component, it would not work. The system would not work. So that is what we are going to discuss in today's videos, that what are the various things or devices or the components that we call them in an IoT. So basically all the things or the devices that are used in IoT are used to build a connection. We need to build an interconnection or connection of various components. Why do we need to build this connection? So that we can process the data. Whatever data is captured through the devices, we need to process that data. We need to provide interfaces. Interface is basically used to provide a means, is used as a means of communication. The data can be captured in the raw form, the data can be processed, then further it can be produced as an output. So for all these things, interfaces needed. Then we need to provide storage for all the data that in its raw form that is captured. We need to provide a storage or an intermediate storage for that data. Then we need to have graphical interface, which makes interface very easier, especially for a layman. Interfacing or interacting graphically is much more easier. So we need to have graphical interfaces. So that is the reason why we need things or devices in IoT. So all these generate data. All these things that we have discussed, they basically what they do? They generate data. So they generate data in a form. In what form? In a form that can be analyzed, and that analyzed by what? By an analytical system. So all these things are required to generate data in such a manner that this data can be analyzed by an analytical system, and we need to have programs to perform operations. We need to have programs. These programs should be able to perform operations and then used to improve the system. So that is the sole purpose for having your things or devices in an IoT. For example, now if I take the example of a temperature sensor. If I take the example of a temperature sensor, then a temperature sensor is used to analyze the temperature. What it does? It analyzes the temperature. And then it generates, on the basis of this analysis, it generates data. It generates data from a specific location. Not just anywhere, but from a specific location, and is then determined by algorithms. So temperature sensor is just one component or thing in IoT. So any component is used to analyze the data and then produce result. So when we take the example of a temperature sensor, for example, a temperature sensor is a kind of sensor that analyzes the temperature. So sensors is a device that basically senses the data and then generates it in a form which can be read by human beings. So for example, you must have seen digital thermometers. All the digital thermometers have temperature sensors. They sense the temperature of the human body. So when you use a digital thermometer, the sensor senses the temperature of your body, then it analyzes it, and then it processes it in a form, or generates it in a form that can be read by the human body. It generates the data from specific location. What is that location? In case of a digital thermometer, it is the human body, specific human being who is using it, that human body. Then it senses the data, then it analyzes the data. After analyzing the data, it generates it in a form that is human readable. So a temperature sensor is one such example of the things or devices in IoT. So now I think you'll be better able to understand why we need things or devices in IoT. So next is, the first thing is your various devices, the various devices that you need. Then the next component is your connectivity. If we talk of the next component, that is your connectivity. Now you have all the things, you have the required things that are needed to capture data, that is fine. But next is your connectivity. So what does connectivity involve? Connectivity involves the various devices. Connectivity involves various devices like the USB host and the Ethernet. These are used for connectivity. Connectivity between what? Connectivity between the devices and the server. So of course you have devices, but devices alone would not work. Just like you have a computer at home, but unless you have internet connection, you won't be able to access the information. Similarly, just having the devices won't work. You need to have connectivity between the devices and the various components. So to have this connectivity, what kind of devices are used? You use USB host and Ethernet to provide connectivity between what? Between the devices we have discussed and between the server, because server is that location where all the data is stored, right? So all the data is stored and accessed through servers. So that's why you need to have connectivity between the devices and the servers. Now USB, the full form of USB is, what is a USB? The full form of USB is Universal Serial Bus. The full form of USB is Universal Serial Bus. It is a standard that establishes specifications. So you can say that USB's full form is Universal Serial Bus, and this is a standard that establishes specifications for cable connectors and protocols, and also establishes the protocols for connection. So what kind of cable connectors will be used, and what would be the protocols? That is the set of rules and set of rules for communication for providing the connection. So this is provided by the Universal Serial Bus, that is the USB. So it is a standard that is establishing specifications for the cable connectors and establishes the protocols for connection. Next important component after the devices and connectivity, the next important component is your processor, right? You know, without a processor, no information can be processed, and data in its raw form is of no use unless it is processed. So you need to have processors also. So what is the role of processors in IoT? A processor is basically like a CPU. Just like you have the central processing unit in a computer system, similarly for IoT devices also you can think of processors just like a CPU. So a processor like a CPU, and then other units, some other alongside with some other units, is basically used to do what? It is used to process data, and then with the help of this data, why do you need to process data? Because with the help of this processed data, you can further improve the decision quality of an IoT system. You can improve the decision quality of an IoT system, because this processed data then helps or aids in analyzing, in providing analysis, and then with the help of that analysis, using analytical systems, you can improve the decision quality of the IoT systems. Then another important component after the processors is your audio and video interfaces. Your audio and video interfaces. So what are these audio video interfaces? Basically, it is an interface like the HDMI. You must have seen in your TVs also that you have interfaces like HDMI. So these interfaces like the HDMI and RCA. Any interface like HDMI and RCA devices is used to record audio and videos in a system. So these interfaces are used to basically do what? Record audio and video in a system. Because when you are capturing the data can be in the form of audio, the data can be in the form of video. So how do you capture that data? First of all, how do you gather that data at first place? It is with the help of the audio and video interfaces. The audio and video interfaces that are used for recording audio and video in an IoT system are HDMI and RCA. Now you would ask what an HDMI and RCA is. Basically, HDMI stands for your high definition. HDI stands for high definition multimedia interface. That is, the full form of HDMI is high definition multimedia interface. What is its functionality? The functionality of HDMI is that it combines audio and video. The HDMI or the high definition multimedia interface combines audio and video into a single digital interface, so that you don't have to use separate interfaces for the audio and video data. So basically it is a socket and a plug interface. What kind of an interface is it? It is a socket and plug interface. It is a socket and plug interface that transmits both audio and video digital signals. So you do not need separate interfaces to transmit audio signal and video signal. You can transmit both the audio and video signals using the same interface, that is the HDMI, high definition multimedia interface. Then RCA. RCA stands for Radio Corporation of America. The full form of RCA is Radio Corporation of America, and it is basically an electrical connector used to carry audio and video signals. So it is a connector. RCA here is a connector which is used to carry the audio and video signals. right? So these are the two components that are used for audio video interfaces, your HDMI and RCA. The full form of HDMI is high definition multimedia interface. The full form of RCA is Radio Corporation of America. HDMI is used to combine audio and video signals into a single digital interface, and RCA is used as a connector to carry the audio and video signals. Now, after this particular component, the next important component for IoT system is your input and output interface. So what is your input and output interface? Now basically to give input, when you need to give input, obviously to capture any data the device needs to get input. So when you have to give input, right, and when after capturing and processing the data, when you have to give output. So to give input and output signals to sensors. A sensor will capture data through the input signals, process and analyze, and then transmit it through the output signals. So to do this particular thing, to give input and output signals to the sensors and actuators, to give the input and output signals to the sensors and actuators, we use things like UART, then we use SPI, and then we use your CAN. Now we will discuss this in detail. UART, SPI and CAN are the things that are used for providing input signals and output signals to the sensors, hence they work as input and output interface. Now what are these UART, SPI and CAN? UART, the full form of UART is your Universal Synchronous Services, a synchronous receiver transmitter device to device communication protocol. Device to device communication protocol. So UART stands for Universal Synchronous Receiver Transmitter Device to Device Protocol. So basically a protocol which is used for receiving and transmitting data from one device to another device, right? So it is a universal protocol which can be used universally. Next is your SPI. What is SPI? The full form of SPI is Serial Peripheral Interface. So SPI stands for your Serial Peripheral Interface. It is used for, what is it used for? It is used for your synchronous serial communication, and it is a synchronous serial communication interface specification which is used for your short distance communication. So whenever short distance communication is required, then in that case your SPI can be used, since it provides a specification for short distance communication, which is synchronous serial kind of communication. Okay, then is your CAN. What does CAN stand for? CAN stands for Controller Area network. The CAN stands for Controller Area Network. It is basically a standard. It is a standard that has been designed. It is a standard that has been designed to allow your microcontroller and other devices to communicate. It allows microcontroller and other devices to communicate without. It allows these devices to communicate without any host computers. So any devices can be communicate with each other without using any host computer, using the CAN, whose full form is Controller Area Network. So basically it is a standard that allows microcontrollers and other devices to communicate with each other without using any host computer. And the last component of this IoT things or devices in IoT are, that means the various things and devices that are required to make up an IoT system is the storage interface. Is your storage interface. Now what is your storage interface? The storage interface basically consists of things like the SD cards that you must have heard of, the SD, then your MMC, then your SDIO. These are all the things that are used in storage interface to store the data generated from an IoT device. So basically whatever data is generated by the IoT device, that is stored using these devices. Store the data generated by IoT device. So SD cards, MMC cards, SDIO cards are all used to store the data that is generated from an IoT device. Now what is an SD card? The full form of SD card is secure digital. So secure digital cards are, you all have heard about SD cards. Most of us use these SD cards. So what are these SD or secure digital cards? These are basically non-volatile flash devices like the pen drives. Pen drives are also flash devices. So these are non-volatile flash devices which can be electronically erased and reprogrammed. You can erase them electronically and then reprogram them, and these are non-volatile flash devices. Next is your MMC cards. So what is an MMC card? An MMC card stands for the multimedia cards. So multimedia cards are used for solid state storage. When you want solid state storage, then you can use the multimedia cards. Solid state storage. Now what is solid state storage? That means such kind of a storage that stores and retrieves, such kind of a storage that stores and retrieves digital information. Any such device that stores and retrieves digital information using only electronic circuits. So such kind of a storage is known as your solid state storage, and it is provided by the MMC or the multimedia cards. Then as we said that the third kind of a device that provides storage interface is your SDIO. So what is an SDIO? SDIO basically stands for your secure digital IO, or the secure digital input output. So the full form of SDIO is secure digital input output. It is a version of what? Of the secure digital memory cards. It is a kind of version of the SD or the secure digital memory cards. Basically, it adds wireless transmission to a handheld device. So using the SDIO, you can use wireless transmission. Using the SDIO card, you can add wireless transmission to a handheld device. Like, what are handheld devices? Like your mini computers, palm tops. So all these devices can provide wireless transmission using your SDIO cards. Hence, this way it stores a lot of data, right? So the SDIO cards, the MMC cards and the SD cards are all used to provide your storage interfaces. Now the last component that we will discuss is your memory interface and graphics. Your memory interface and graphics. So other memory interface and graphics includes your DDR and GPU. What is DDR and GPU? First of all, both of them are used to control. They are used to control the activities of any IoT device. The DDR cards, DDR and the GPU are used to control the activity of IoT devices or an IoT system in general. More than devices, an IoT system in general. So these memory interface graphics, which include the DDR and GPU, control the activity of the IoT system. The full form of DDR is double data rate. Double data rate. That means the speed at which the data can be transmitted. The speed of data transmission is twice as compared to your regular. When you compare to the regular RAMs, the speed provided by the DDR cards is your regular SD RAMs. As compared to the regular SD RAMs, the speed of data transmission is twice provided by the DDR or the double data rate cards as compared to your regular SD RAMs. GPU stands for your graphics processing unit. Just like you have your central processing unit, the GPU is the graphics processing unit. The full form of GPU is the graphics processing unit. Now, what does this GPU does? It is a specialized processor. As the name says, processing unit. What kind of processing unit? The graphics processing unit. So you can say that it is a specialized processor which is originally designed to accelerate the speed of graphics rendering. That means you can accelerate the rendering of graphics using your GPU or the general processing unit. So it is designed to accelerate the graphics rendering. What is it useful for? In which cases is the GPU used? It is useful for machine learning. Whenever you are doing machine learning, for machine learning GPU is very useful. Then it is useful for video editing. It is used for applications like video editing, machine learning, and various gaming applications where high-end graphics are used. So these are the application areas of a graphics processing unit or a GPU. So these were all the components of these were all the things or devices that are used in an IoT system.